Welcome into the show is action aficionado and giant fan Mark Shaver. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me again. It's a fun time.
Totally a fun time. Yeah. So, what was your introduction to Hong Kong cinema?
Well, like we talked about on the Bruce Lee episode, it was through Bruce Lee's films originally. So you could kind of say he's the
Godfather of it all. Yeah.
The first real Hong Kong badass in films, at least I'd say. I mean, Jimmy Wong you could say as well, but I mean, he just didn't have the charisma as Bruce did. No offense to him, but I mean, he had some good movies too. But Bruce Lee had that ultimate badass,
ride or die kind of attitude. Is like, here we are.
Yeah, like don't fuck with me kind of. It really came across.
You
on
can't
screen.
curse on this. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know.
No, but yeah, it's just so wild too. It's like they know how to express themselves without saying very little, and yet, again, yeah, the people who don't get it just take the action. The people who do get it are just blown away. It's like, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I actually used this as an example years and years ago. I was taking some class in communications, and for whatever reason, they wanted us to give a presentation on like nonverbal communication. So, being obsessed with the films as I am, I played a clip from The Way of the Dragon where Bruce Lee's character, he couldn't speak English in the film, so he had to kind of communicate through body language a lot. And there was like that classic scene. It was even referenced in Kung Fu Hustle where he's like telling that Italian mob boss, like, I mean, basically like, don't fuck with me, like he points to everybody, like Nora Meow behind him, and points at him like
watching you.
basically like, you, yeah, them guys back there, you don't touch them. Otherwise, and then he like clenches his fists, I'm gonna fuck you up, So,
and just how do you stand your ground, and it's not easy, and dealing with, again, the town bully concept, and very little of the racism that the studios were trying to insert made it through. There was a great podcast, Give Me Back My Action Horror Movies. Shout out to Charlie Chase here, and he did a good job of summing. I was like, there's only like a few of them scenes in those movies that don't sit well. Like there's a few henchmen with the buck teeth, and it's like, well, okay. Someone was gonna insert that one way or the other. That sucks, but for the most part, I mean, pretty strong, pretty progressive cast, pretty well done.
Yeah. I mean, Chuck Norris in the film, and I think that was his first real big film role, actually. I mean, he'd been a world champion at that time, so so yeah, I mean, we could cover all Bruce Lee's films again, but I mean, we pretty much covered them all last time.
Good.
So I mean, whatever you want to talk about.
No, it's fine. So I was going to go more into just like the post Benny Chan, Ringo Lam, and John Woo and Cy Hark era. Are just the masters of coming together with some action and crime, and sometimes even sci-fi horror elements in movies that just had very explosive gunplay and very creative fight scenes and superstars.
You mentioned Choi Hawk. I was thinking about his stuff the other day. Double Team, he was his American debut. And at that time, when I first saw that film, I didn't know who he was. That was when I was just at my kind of entry level in the Hong Kong cinema. Of course, I knew John Woo, but, but a lot of the other directors I wasn't familiar with yet, other than like Stanley Tong and one or two others, but mostly just a few of the main film stars like Jackie and Jet Li and Chow Yun-fat and those guys. So, but I used to, because I was a huge fan of action films from anywhere, right? I mean, pretty much Hong Kong and Hollywood, top two creators, at least in the 90s, of action films. So, of course, Double Team, I was looking forward to it. I bought the VHS. I used to be a huge fan of the NBA back in the 90s, so I thought it was really cool. Okay, Dennis Rodman's in it. So, and definitely, I was always a fan of Van Damme. So, unfortunately, that was kind of the start of his career downfall that he experienced at that time. Luckily, he was able to bounce back. But, just the style of that film, I watched it again like last summer. And, it's kind of different looking at it or watching it as a Van Damme movie, or once you become familiar with, like Choi Hawk's style, then you can watch it as a Choi Hawk film and then, kind of get more out of it. Of course, it's a silly film, very campy, as you might say. Just like the scenes with Van Damme and Rodman and like their little disguises or whatever when they're in like Rome and all that stuff.
It's a wacky movie, that's for sure.
With those monks, Dennis Rodman throwing the skull and making basketball puns and stuff. I mean, but the action, Sammo Hung actually worked on some of that. Mickey Rourke was like all like buff, weirdly buff for that movie, and
he was still boxing at that time.
The Tiger, but it was really Choi Hawk's camera that made the action really kind of unique. Just different things. I mean, especially if you look at the other film he did with Van Damme, Knockoff, where and that one I saw in the theater, and when I saw it, I thought, oh, that was crap. But looking back and watching it again and again and again, coming from the perspective of, okay, now I know who this director is, I know his style,
why you like him, what you don't dig, So yeah, it's just you read them. I mean, it's the same thing with reading John Woo through Hard Target. It's like, okay, the good in that movie comes through, even with the shit that doesn't work, like the Cajun accent and the utter distracting townsfolk.
I love Hard Target. I mean, that's definitely up on my, more top of the list of my favorites. But ultimately, I got to say, The Killer was the ultimate John Woo film.
I like it. I feel like the first half's a little too predictable by today's standards. You know who's going to get shot and killed, but the last part is just so much emotional, bloodshed and just seeing these guys who have nothing in common, a police inspector and a hitman working together. Wow.
Yeah. And that's what, John Woo, you could say to a certain extent, he was probably the ultimate director of, at least characters that you might call Hong Kong badasses, right? I mean, that's kind of a broad statement, but especially Chow Yun-fat, I mean, Hard Boiled, and even his American films where you got, a lot of those films had like two sides of the same coin, like, people obviously Face Off. I mean, that one really took it to a new level with Travolta and Cage actually switching faces, and I mean, that was just such a cool film.
Every movie star is virtually doing kung fu or explosive gunplay at this and helping popularize it even more.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. Ultimately, I'd say Face Off was Woo's best Hollywood film, followed very closely by Hard Target. And again, The Killer, I gotta say that was
Broken Arrow, one. But I totally understand.
Oh no, I really love Broken Arrow too. A lot of people kind of, when you're reading about John Woo's films, a lot of people kind of shit on Broken Arrow a little bit, and I can see why, because it's doesn't have a whole lot of John Woo's style in it. I mean, it's
Paycheck. You're just like totally what it is. It's Paycheck.
But it's still I mean, it's such a cool film. It's such a great action film, I think. Like, that was one of those films where I remember on IMDb, they said, Woo's cut came in at X amount of length, and they had to trim violence. Obviously, we all know about Hard Target in that scenario, but
Sam Raimi told the studio to leave him alone, and yet the studio still fucked with it.
yeah, I think he had to submit it like 7 or 8 times for the
And then
R rating.
the ratings, and people just aren't understanding. It's like, you know what you signed up for. You've seen worse in a Stallone movie. It's like, just...
Yeah. But I think I mean, I read a book several years ago, and I think John was quoted in the book as saying, he wanted to prove to the critics in Hollywood that, hey, he can make an American movie just as well as anybody. And I think he proved it with Broken Arrow.
Totally. It gets shot on also, but I especially I really dig Blackjack, the USA Network TV pilot that he did with Dolph Lundgren, because that was just his attempt at basically doing a, for lack of a better word, just I would have seen it. Once a Thief was already a hit, and that just did not get enough discussion.
Yeah, the remake, he made the remake for the, I guess it was a Canadian TV series, so it was supposed to be like a pilot episode, but it was kind of like a movie as well. And then, from what I understand, Blackjack was supposed to be the same kind of deal, but then they never made a TV series out of it for whatever reason. But I thought it was a lot better actually than the Once a Thief TV movie that he did.
Mm-hmm. And there's just something to be said for, again, right place, right time, right energy, and unfortunately it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, and I remember Mission Impossible, the first film, right? And
same kind of transition.
I remember at the time, thinking it was going to be like GoldenEye or something like that, where it was just action packed. Of course, at the time I was only 11 or 12, but I was kind of disappointed with it as a kid. Looking back, it's a pretty cool film. But when Mission Impossible 2 came out, okay, it's directed by John Woo. I knew who he was. I loved his films already, and I was like, when I saw it in the theater, I was like thinking like, okay, this is what I was hoping for with the first one. But looking back, MI2, I gotta say, like the first kind of half of the film is a little bit too slow paced, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But and I wouldn't call it the best film of the Mission Impossible series, but it still has the best action. That as soon as they get that gunfight going,
I know many. That was their intro to John Woo. They had seen like parts of Hard Target or Broken Arrow, but he just was, by the time he's in Face Off, and now they know who he is.
Yeah, I think like Face Off and MI2 were probably, I'm sure they were his biggest box office hits. Probably Mission Impossible 2 would probably be number 1 given the franchise and the PG-13 rating and all that. And there was like that whole rumor too about that film where they said, oh, okay, Woo made a 3-hour cut and it was going to be R-rated and this and that. I actually shot a question over to Terrence Chang about that, who had produced, obviously he was Woo's production partner for a long time.
Yeah.
And he pretty much indicated that, John Woo knew from the get-go that MI2 would be PG-13. So I'm not entirely sure if this rumored R-rated cut of it really exists or not.
I think it's just left in the vault at that point.
Yeah.
What you see is as good as you're going to get, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I mean, for a PG-13, I mean, it definitely had, especially, the shootout in the lab and then the whole finale with the motorcycle chases and all that going on. I mean,
Hans Zimmer has a good score, and he's even reused portions of that. And I mean, it even brings us back into that one Hong Kong director who did The Big Hit.
Oh, Kirk Wong. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like everyone was hot for a minute and just trying their best, and given the circumstances. But yeah, there are times where it's like, yeah, I mean, some of it just isn't as good. And so I just always go back to even just classic John Woo, because like Red Cliff just can't, his attempt at a dynasty epic just can't touch, again, The Killer or Hard Boiled. It just,
right.
It is
exactly.
fun.
I mean, Woo and I really love Red Cliff, especially like the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I know they split into two parts essentially, but almost every one of John Woo's films I have enjoyed to a certain degree. I thought Manhunt was a big disappointment, but I also drove all the way to I also drove all the way to Toronto Film Festival to see it.
Yeah.
So that probably was part of my disappointment, but it did have, looking back, like the shootout at that like ranch or whatever, like kind of in the middle. That was, pretty good, but not like up to Woo standards. I mean, I noticed he used I think he shot it on video, and it looked, digitally, and it looked like CGI was used in some of the gun special effects and whatnot. So
it was awkward. Yeah,
it didn't have that authentic Woo feeling to it, but it still had a little bit of his style left. So, I still bought the Blu-ray.
Oh, good. I mean, you're going to do it anyway if you're a huge fan of the person. Like, you're going to buy even the movies that you don't care for by Scorsese or Spielberg just to reanalyze them or hear them talk about it. And sometimes that's just okay. And it's like, yeah, I want to know why I like what I like.
Yeah. And, while we're on the subject of John Woo, I finally got around, well, it was the same year Manhunt came out, 2017. I had never seen The Crossing, that he'd done that other two-part epic that was split into two films.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually really enjoyed the first one. It had like quite a bit of action in it, like, battle scenes, kind of like Windtalkers had, but and still, I mean,
I think that's the one, Red Cliff.
Well, this was a different one. This was like, it was about the sinking of this ship.
Okay, so I'm not familiar with this one.
It was never released in the United States. I don't even think it got a Hong Kong home video release.
Was it political or something?
Well, it probably had a little bit of politics in it. You can't avoid that anymore with like working with China.
Especially if it's a war movie, you're gonna have moments like that. But that's wild.
It was more of like a love story, really. I mean, I only watched it one time. I watched both parts, but I definitely have to revisit at least the first part, because I mean, it had some, good war scenes in it.
Nice.
And anytime you give John Woo guns in his films,
you're down.
yeah, exactly. So.
So with Ringo Lam, so I was introduced to him through Full Alert and just a bunch of other he and Vinny Chan and just a lot the guys who did Infernal Affairs and Young and Dangerous. It's like just I instantly recognized their name, and I'm like, I know this means some serious business, whatever it is. And fun fact, just Ringo, he's another one. He worked twice with Van Damme. He did Maximum Risk, and it's a noir film all and through, and like you don't even recognize Van Damme. You forget you're watching a Van Damme movie half the time. It's just his usual kind of mysterious action crime drama.
Yeah,
there's some mystery, and then you get to that one where he's like a serial killer or something. It's like it was direct-to-video in some areas, and then theatrical areas.
Replicant, right?
Replicant, that's the one, yeah. And so it is just cool seeing which ones can actually really get along really well with international casts, which ones don't really cut the mustard, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think any of these guys could have succeeded in Hollywood, in my opinion. Obviously, John Woo had the most success out of the directors, you know, and I'd say definitely Jackie Chan and Jet Li out of any of the, you know, movie stars.
Totally.
Um,
Especially with War and you know, just some of those other movies like, you know, Shanghai Nights is like, okay, so by this point, you're getting to see them do throwbacks to what hardcore fans know him for.
yeah, I mean, you know, Donnie Yen obviously was in a few Hollywood movies, but kind of playing
other than
secondary
Highlander
role.
and Rogue One, like he doesn't fare too well in Shanghai Nights, and there's a few others he's in, like Blade 2. He choreographed the fights, but that's the one where he just said, "The hell with you, Hollywood," because they would not let him do what he was trying to do. So,
yeah, well, I mean, that's actually a blessing because he went back. I read an interview or something from him a long time ago where Tony Jaa had just burst on the scene with Ong Bak, and you know, it kind of floored everybody. And Donnie Yen said, "Hey, you know, we can't let we can't let Thailand take the crown." You know, I mean, so I think that's kind of what inspired him to make SPL, and then I mean, from there on, I mean, his career just hit overdrive. And you know, if you didn't consider him a superstar before Ip Man, then certainly once that film hit, then there was no question left. But I'd say he's been, regardless of any people that don't like him, I think he's been the ultimate Hong Kong badass of the last, you know, couple decades. So,
well, Mike Scott from Atkins Undisputed Action for Everyone, I think, summed it up well. And this is eye-opening to me. I had no idea. Apparently, he just had a huge ego back in the day. But I think
that's what I've heard. I think, you know, I've never met the man.
Wan Wu Ping and him had a falling out, and I had no idea. I thought they just, you know, they went where the wind blew, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like, because, I mean, from what I gathered, it sounds like, you know, first of all, it sounds like whatever the issue was, and I've never met him, so I can't say, but I think he's, from everything I gather, I think he's like really like kind of cooled down these days, you know, maybe he's more chill. So
you would hope, you know.
Yeah. And I think he and Yuen Ping even possibly reconnected because
I think they did.
He did that Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon sequel, the English language one that Michelle Yeoh was in, and then I don't know, it was okay. It was like, I think it was just only on Netflix.
Yeah, I couldn't get into that one, but it wasn't against them. It was just the way it was filmed and over CGI'd and just not remarkable story-wise. But I can't blame them for wanting to reconnect with that. You know, it's just a giant ass hit, you know?
Yeah, well, and I forgot, of course, Yuen Ping did Ip Man 3 and 4 choreography, taking over from Sammo Hung, which I don't know why they switched them up, but maybe Sammo had health problems or something.
I hope not. That'd be bad.
Yeah, I know. I remember when they were doing Ip Man 2, he had some kind of like a heart surgery or something, but he still filmed the fight. So Sammo Hung is definitely one of the ultimate Hong Kong badasses.
1000%. And so it seems like a lot of them are now just showing up in just small bad guy roles. You think that's just as good as they're going to get? They got to be like a supporting character who kicks ass in one scene, like Veronica Nago is another one, and she showed up in like Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and I think her co-star did as well. It's just like, okay, interesting. But it's even more annoying because it's like they use them, but then they don't. It's like they make them part of the cast, but then they don't actually get to see them use what they can do. They just have them sitting at a desk, like Michelle Yeoh in, just what's it called? Crazy Rich Asians and what have you. It's like that's not even remotely close to the Michelle Yeoh we all know, which is on James Bond and Twin Warriors and The Line of Duty.
Yeah, I think Michelle Yeoh. I think she's a good actress too. So I mean, I would assume, given she's not in her 20s anymore, maybe she wanted to do more like stuff that didn't have action. But it's always a treat when she comes back and still does another action film like the spin-off Master Z, the Ip Man Legacy.
Yeah.
And that's another guy right there, the lead actor, Zhang Jin. Sometimes he uses the English name Max.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that guy too. I mean, I think for a while, he seemed to be positioning himself as the next big Hong Kong badass, but
yeah, with Wolf Warrior and all those, he's been here and there. And same thing with, I talked about this earlier, like Scott Adkins seems to break into all these international productions. Same thing with Frank Grillo, and yet it's like the talent's there, but are the investors? Are they only investing in you because you were part of an ensemble versus they actually want to work with you? It can get pretty political there,
Well, I mean, I think when you check out all the forums and stuff, I mean, to me it sounds like people still really, I think they really like Scott Adkins and his definitely
he has an unreal following that just no one else seems to have mastered.
He definitely has a lot of talent when you see him on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should stop making him, assuming that somebody's making him do it. But when he plays like American characters and like faking the accent, I mean,
just be you, man.
Yeah, but I understand. I mean, sometimes like it was Hard Target 2, which was not good.
Going for
but
like a Southern accent or some shit like that. Yeah.
It was like a fake sequel, basically. Like I don't understand why they do that. Going back to films that are that old and then doing this, I guess you could say, a sequel in name only, but it's direct to video.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's already what Undisputed was, so I understand why he kind of became part of that whole scene too. And some of it is, again, just where the industry's going, and some of it is just, that's currently what's paying at the moment, and you can make it your own. It's kind of like how Michael J. White made Never Back Down his own franchise. I'm not a fan of that whole thing, but I can't blame him for saying, I'm going to do what I want to do with this in name only sequel, much like with Undisputed,
Yeah. And that's cool too. If you really like look at all of those, they
made their own career,
and a lot of them
a while.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys, did work on some Hong Kong films back in the day. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
Scott Adkins, Michael J. White was actually in one called Silver Hawk. It was Michelle Yeoh, like a superhero movie. It wasn't very good, but
yeah, I couldn't get into that one. But that and one of the Gen X cops movies, then unknown guy known as Paul Rudd.
Yeah, Paul Rudd. I mean, you got obviously Chuck Norris back in the day, and technically you could say Van Damme with Knockoff. I mean, it was pretty much a co-production from what I understand. So let's see who else. Well, he wasn't in the movie, but Steven Seagal was a producer on this film called Dragon Squad.
Yeah, that was really good. I was really blown away by it.
The gunplay was really cool. Sammo Hung was in it. Maggie Q. Michael
She's a badass. Yeah.
Michael Biehn, another Hollywood actor popping up
I'm
in
so glad you mentioned that. I was like,
Hong
I would
Kong
mention
film.
it, and only certain people at school knew what I was talking about. Like, you've never seen this? What's it called? It's called Dragon Eyes, or not Dragon, Dragon Squad. Oh, I've never heard of it. Why is it
No,
so
that
Steven Seagal's involved? He's just a producer. It can't be
yeah,
good.
Simon
Oh,
Yum
it's
was in
good.
it too, and a lot
As
of young.
usual, he is the go-to. If you need a police captain, you need a gangster, you need just a traitor. He's so great. And did you ever see Contract Killer, also known as Hitman, with Jet Li?
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
I was just so twisted out. He's tracking him, and then he reveals he's the vigilante who he's been mistaken for. I'm like, but he just sells it. He's like, he instantly just says it, and even though it's all subtitled and everything, you buy it.
Yeah, I mean, what's cool is kind of sitting down. I mean, once you watch so many films, I mean, when I first started watching Hong Kong films that were in Cantonese with subtitles, obviously I didn't know the language, but over time I was able to pick up, you know, a decent amount of it, I would say. I mean, I can't claim to
Video
be
stores and what have you. Yeah, just keep
I
it.
can't claim to be a great at it or anything, but it's to the point where if I got to choose between uh, Cantonese with no subtitles or English dub, I'll just watch it with no subtitles and try to pick out a few sentences from what they say. But
Some of them you have to, unfortunately, but there are other ones where it's like, I'll buy it, but I'm not paying more than $50 for it. Something I'm only going to watch once. And I found, like I was saying earlier, I think eBay is a better option. Amazon is just through the roof, unreliable. And what I find that once you buy anything from any region, sometimes they stop checking to see if it's in the right region. And you're like, I can't play that, at least not now.
yeah, luckily for Blu-ray fans who love Hong Kong movies, they share the same region. I mean, at least here in the U.S., I should say, they share the same region with us.
Most part, yeah.
The DVDs, I remember technically Hong Kong was Region 3, but
Something like that, yeah.
for the longest time, a lot of those old releases were not encoded. They would just be like Region 0.
You could play them on a VLC player on like a Windows computer, but that's about it, yeah.
And there was where I used to live in New York State, they had Hollywood Video, and they just had so many, and that was really helped facilitate, like, when I was like really getting into the films, like probably just after high school. So like 2000, 2003, 2004. And, I would go on the different review sites like lovehkfilm.com or
those are great. Still are. Yep.
Just kind of writing down
Blood Brothers.
recommended films. And then I'd go down to Hollywood Video, and I was shocked at how many they had. I mean, they had a ton of films. And, then of course I ended up buying almost everything I ever rented. But Beast Cops, I remember that it was Anthony Wong and Michael Wong. The one where, I don't know if you saw it or not, Michael Wong's pulls up in that Hummer.
Oh, God.
It's kind of like they call it like a cop soap opera, sort of like. It's kind of more about like these guys.
There's a lot of
lives
those.
and whatnot. Yeah, but
so you're talking Beast Cops? Is that the one?
Yeah, Beast Cops.
That's the one. Okay, yes. And that is Simon Yen and Anthony Wong, Xiao Zhang, and again, just dynamite actors. Everything. They're just phenomenal. And we mentioned Maggie Cheong and some of those others who were just like the go-to. Is like they would just be so dramatically rewarding. And the guy who plays Chicken in Young and Dangerous, he's good. He's always comedic relief, but he kind of just knows how to kind of give you an idea of what's on his mind without saying anything, even though he didn't have as big a career as, say, someone who was known for stunt comedy like Stephen Chow.
Right. And I mean, one of the best actors from that generation, Tony Leung Chiu-wai, he just made the Hollywood debut in Shang-Chi.
Yes.
And I mean, when he was at the top of his game, I mean, he was such a good actor. He didn't even have to say anything, like in Hard Boiled or in Hero or Infernal Affairs, whatever, right? I mean, most of the films he did, really.
Totally. And I'm just like, hey, this is the perfect compromise because finally this is a Marvel movie I can see eye to eye with. And at the same time, like, there's some good ones, but there are some stinkers that I'm just like, I don't care who says it's good. It's not that great, unless you're a comic book fan. And it just doesn't work as a movie. But then there's the other ones. It's like, okay, if you can be as epic as, say, the Justice League extended cut, I'm down too. Just don't be like this DC movie or that. And it's like that one was just such a fun throwback to Hong Kong dynasty epics and mixing in, dragon effects and some other action movie like underground fighting and out of control vehicle tropes. And you finally get to see Michelle Yeoh and Leong doing what you wanted to see them do for quite a while, And
Yeah.
it seems like Chiang was just kind of doing what Andy Lau was doing for a while. He just be a narc in a movie, just a throwback to his, Infernal Affairs and Hard Boiled roles, and then other ones where he just shows up for a minute playing someone's uncle, or
Yeah, Andy Lau. I mean, he definitely is somebody we should talk about too. I mean, that guy back in the '90s. I remember reading another book talking about how many films he would be working on at what a certain time, and that supposedly he would drive from the set of one film to another film and like sleep at the stoplight or something.
oh,
I don't
God.
know if that's true, but I did read that in a book.
Jeez.
So
that is
and he got in that he got like trampled by a horse a few years ago in some commercial he was making and like made a full recovery. So I think we can add Andy Lau to the list of Hong Kong badasses.
Oh, totally. I found it even funnier how he was in The Great Wall and he's starring opposite Matt Damon, the guy who plays his character in the Infernal Affairs remake, The Departed.
Yeah, that was.
I made that reference,
ironic.
and only like 1 out of 5 people got that joke. I'm like, yeah, well, you'll know it when you see it. And I like that one too because he was working with his House of Flying Daggers director, Yang Zimao.
Yeah, The Great Wall. I mean, it was like a popcorn movie. I mean,
Totally.
it was. It's not House of Flying Daggers, but
No,
it was okay. I enjoyed it kind of, but it wasn't great. But it was nice to see Andy Lau in like
I just found it better than so many other Hollywood movies where it's like they'll just like there's some people who show up and I was talking about Skyscraper earlier, and it's like there's one where it's like you got The Rock, you got a bunch of other guys, and they're just not all that used all that well. And despite there being some clever stuff near the end where they have like a Enter the Dragon Hallway of Mirrors, and you're like, but this deserves a better movie. And sometimes you see it. You see its influence, especially in, the Jet Li DMX movies, but you're just like, they're just holding back a little bit. And I don't know what it is. They're just not going fully cranked all the way. It's kind of bizarre.
I think that, you got Romeo Must Die, which I really like that film. I know it wasn't what some
I got to
people
rewatch it. It's one of those where it's like there's some great acting moments and everything. Russell Wong is a great villain, and when it stops being Rush Hour and Shakespeare, it does kind of feel like a fun, proper tribute to Jet's earlier work. And then when they do all the CGI fighting near the end, I'm like, it does not deserve that.
I mean, that's some of the wire work was a little bit off, but I'd say that was one of his better Hollywood movies
compared to the other ones. Yeah,
Cradle to the Grave. I remember I was like looking forward to that one so much, and
I'm the same way. It's like it has less of the bullshit in the other Jet Li DMX movies by Joel Silver, but at the same time, it's just like it's just when you see the stunts, they last barely a second on screen. You're like, that trailer, those guys figured it out. That's the only eye-catching moment, and yet you got all this other stuff where it's overpopulated with the plot. It's overplotted, and then there's not enough of what you want to see, and then it's just they needed a better crew.
And I think DMX showed potential as kind of being a potential action star, but I mean I think he only did like one more movie after that. Like
he did a bunch of other things, but they were just like small things. And
yeah, he did like that Never Die Alone.
That was awesome,
movie,
but that was more like Belly as opposed to his kung fu movies. And you're like, yeah, he should. If he had gotten his drug rehab together, he could have been with a bunch of these other action guys in more movies.
Yeah, it was sad. I saw on Twitter Jet Li had posted like a rest in peace kind of a tweet after DMX passed last year. So, he said it was nice to get to know him. And I remember DMX was the film Exit Wounds, and they had brought a Hong Kong choreographer on there named Dion Lum. And I remember in one of the special features, DMX was talking about him, saying like, he was like a good teacher and stuff for teaching him like the screen fighting in that film. And then of course they did, they had Corey Yun do the other ones with Jet Li. So Corey Yun and some of those guys too, like we talked about Kirk Wong. I mean, Kirk Wong had a lot of potential, and he didn't even do any more films since The Big Hit.
Yeah. Stuff that could have been thought out a little better, and yet just didn't take off.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, he showed up in the movie Kung Fu Jungle, Donnie Yen.
Yeah, it's like, where you been, dude?
And that's like the first I'd seen of him in years.
I think he got fisted way worse than John Woo post Hollywood, to where he's just like, I'm just going to do TV commercials now. I had my window, and I mean, it kind of like with Kaya Sayanat, this is Thailand we're talking about, but, he does a fun John Woo homage movie. And it's just his tribute to all kinds of blockbusters: Michael Bay, John Woo, Michael Mann, and then it's called Fa. It's worth seeing if you can find the clips on YouTube. And then does Ballistic X versus Sever, which has kind of become its own kind of cult movie despite the infamous critic rating. And now he's doing movies with Mark Dacascos, Dirt Cheap in Thailand, and some of them are really cool. One of them was a cool zombie movie. The other was a Collateral type hitman thriller. And
what's this guy's name?
Wick Sayanada, and you know him simply as Chaos. You've seen he did one night.
Okay, I remember that Ballistic X versus Sever movie. I mean,
he did Talkin' To, and he was not proud of that experience, but they forced him to keep his name credit on there. But he's really made some big progress, with Zero Tolerance with Justin Yin and Scott Adkins. He took one of his own movies, added Scott to the cast, recut it, and made a cool Taken type movie. You got Justin Yin from 21 Jump Street there. So, and, with One Night in Bangkok and everything, I think he just keeps reminding the world Mark Dacascos has just been such a great actor who's also been just underused, aside from Cradle to the Grave and Crying Freeman. I don't know why he didn't even pop up in a Hong Kong film in one chance and maybe fight Donnie Yen. That would be great.
Well, he was in that, remember that China Strike Force?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the only Hong Kong film he ever worked on. I think so. But he's every now and then he'll pop up like John Wick 3, and like he played Kung Lao in that Mortal Kombat Legacy, the web series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with his pal Casper Van Dien. Yeah.
Yeah, Johnny Cage. Yeah. So I mean, they were supposed to, or well, actually, they filmed. I know this is getting off topic, but
Oh, good.
they had filmed like a third season, I guess. It wasn't quite clear if it was like Legacy season 3
It got
or
pre-canceled.
yeah, they shelved it. Eric Roberts was actually in it because they released some like footage that they had filmed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how much of Mortal Kombat you're familiar with. But
I am. I've been following the Mortal Kombat Conquest. Not Conquest. It's Mortal Kombat Quest or something like that podcast, and they were interviewing everyone from the Conquest show to the movies, and they interviewed a guy named Fink who had done a Japanese versus Chinese, movie with Steven Seagal, and he was attached to Part 3. It was going to be like a Batman Begins style reboot starring like Jessica Alba as Sonya Blade and a bunch of other cool people who were go-to action stars that were hot shit at that time. And but yeah, they interviewed Garrett Warren, who had done all the stunts and action directing on there.
Yeah,
and he talked to us like,
listened to that one. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, and he's like, yeah, we'll just never be able to release it unless they, give us permission to include it as like on a Blu-ray special feature or some shit. I'm like, that is bullshit. With a new movie coming out, you need to release that, and it's a shame.
Louis Tan was in in that third season. He played Kung Lao's. Well,
I bet he was. He was still a stuntman back then. So yeah.
Kung Jin. He's like either Kung Lao's nephew or cousin, and then Eric Roberts was actually playing this character named Bo Raicho, who's like doesn't look anything like Eric Roberts. I mean, they kind of took basically this character. I think they based his look off of Sammo Hung, like an overweight guy, and
yeah.
And then they had Eric Roberts playing him. That was bizarre, but
it's what it is, man. But yeah, it's they keep changing it up, and I keep hoping, they can include that as like, especially with the whole thing now on HBO Max, is like, please guys, give us the special features, give us that thing. Don't do the whole sit on it and then I don't want to ever release it. It's like pretty soon someone's going to break that contract and just show it to a private screening,
Well, then we can really quickly talk about Robin Shu, who.
Yeah, he had some Hong Kong films too. I saw the one he was in with like a then unknown, like I think he's right? in so many. Yeah, it's like, and
Tiger Cage
same thing
2.
with Aaron Kwok. He was in a movie with like Lucy Liu. It was her first movie. And it was like you got a pop music star, and then his Shu is like, how did he get discovered? How did he make the transition to America to be in Mortal Kombat, his best known role?
So he was like born in Hong Kong, and then he said I believe he moved to California and like went to college there. Before I guess he went back to Hong Kong and then ended up in the movies over there.
That's like Donnie Yen and Michael Wong. He appears in New York.
Yeah, and then I don't know how he got involved with Mortal Kombat, but at the time I thought it would make him a much bigger star than it did. I mean, not to say he wasn't a big star, but he kind of faded from the limelight. So, So I don't know what he's up to nowadays.
Even appearing in the Mortal Street Fighter reboot movie that was awful.
Oh yeah. Chun-Li one, yeah. Josie Ho, you know who she is? The actress, singer.
Really underrated. What happened to her?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to her, but she definitely has that. She can do the badass vibe quite well, like the movie Dream Home. Have you seen that one? She's playing like this, young lady who.
No, I haven't seen that.
She wants to buy a flat, but the housing prices are sky high, so she starts murdering people in this building to drive the prices down. It's like really, really hardcore film in terms of like what they did, like what they got away with doing and stuff. I mean, really, you'd have to see it,
Gotcha. That sounds wacky. I might see it.
Yeah, no, it's a cool film. And then she was
As long as this does anything to do with the Rachel Weisz, Daniel Craig shit fest, I'll watch it.
no, she
That was another
let's
one.
see, she did. She didn't really get in on the action, but there's the classic film Exiled, which has so many
Yes.
Anthony Wong, Simon
Yeah,
Young.
it was a big one. Yeah. Okay, so I have seen
Francis
Josie Ho. I just realized she was in Open Grave with Charlotte Copley and Thomas Kretschmann. So.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that.
I forgot she was in Contagion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah, brief role in Contagion, and she was in that Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li.
Badges of Fury as the chief with Jet Li. So there you go.
That one I didn't watch that one. I thought it looked pretty bad.
It's like it has its moments, but yet it's just not remarkable because you just know they could go way more with it. But I'll take it over.
Colin Chow, I mean, he definitely had his time being a badass.
Mm-hmm.
Lau Ching-wan.
I'm glad you brought him up because he was just so underrated as Seraph in the Matrix movies, and so I would see him in Once Upon a Time in China movies, and Forbidden Kingdom, and
Flashpoint, playing the
Flashpoint. He's just great, and he doesn't get enough recognition. You're like, he deserves way more recognition.
Yeah, surprisingly, I don't know what it is. I mean, the Donnie Yen made the film Special ID.
Yeah, he was in that briefly, I think.
Yeah, he was in that briefly, but they didn't have a fight, and I think a lot of people were disappointed. But I thought Andy On kind of stepped up, and I mean, he doesn't have the same screen presence as Colin Chow, but
no.
He made the end fight worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to top Flashpoint, but
I mean, it set the bar. It was like, here's violent Hong Kong movies and action.
Yeah, that one I had gone to Toronto to see it as well, and I mean, I just remember like people were going crazy. Like as soon as Donnie Yen came on the screen at the very beginning, where he's like just beating up some guy it's like in a gym or something, and people were just cheering and going nuts.
Yeah, they loved it. They really embraced it, and hadn't seen anything like that in a while. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and then, Raging Fire, of course. Have you gotten a chance to see that yet?
Pretty damn good. I mean,
yeah,
we're back to hard-boiled heat territory, where it's like, okay.
Yeah, Benny Chan, he ended his career on a high note. So,
got this awesome movie. Yeah.
Nicholas Che, by the way, I mean, I was thinking earlier, I got to bring him up because he took time off from films and was like doing his whole chef thing and everything, and did you ever see Invisible Target?
Yeah, that was okay for what it was. I was kind of more into City Under Siege.
Really?
They both, they both have their flaws in that they just have very goofy edits, but the ideas are interesting, so you kind of want to rewatch them anyway, even though there's just a lot of junk in them. But the fights are somewhat kind of electric, kind of dynamic.
Yeah, Invisible Target. I love that film, and The White Storm was another one Benny Chan had done.
Right, and there you're seeing Louis Koo just eat it up, just totally dominate. I mean, we talked about him earlier, how just such bullshit, how he gets kind of shunned for a bit because he had like a sex tape scandal or some shit. It's like, yeah, but two consenting adults and one guy just blackmailed and videotaped them. It's like that's bullshit. That's not anything to do with him or his talent as an actor or an action star. And yeah, he's great as the partner in Flashpoint, and then when you see him in White Storm, you're just like, man, he just is so natural, just being a hardboiled cop, and that, and Drug War, also by
Paradox, where he, playing like that father trying to find his daughter, and just like the finale of that film. Obviously, Louis Koo is not a martial artist, but they had Samo do the fight choreography, and I was impressed by that final scene. Obviously, I mean, spoiler alert for anybody who's not seen it, but Tony Jaa wasn't around for the finale, so Louis Koo had to kind of carry it, and he did good with that, like down and dirty, just like rough fighting, just not martial arts, but just throwing down, just I don't know. It was a really well done finale, and then those guys come in with like the laser sights on their guns and stuff.
Oh, it's great. Yeah,
that was cool.
Sometimes just the simplest edits are just what make the movie too. That's the other ironic part. We get all these heavily promoted fighting and gunplay, and it's like, yeah, but these guys are just like veterans of the industry, so there's a lot more nostalgia to this.
You want to talk a minute about like some of the other female stars, like back in the 80s, it was like so many of them, like Moon Lee. I mean, I don't really think of Moon Lee. You don't really think of her as like a so-called badass, but I mean, she would definitely
kind of do, but she's just not on my radar. Like Cynthia Khan, I think, just had more leading into it, just doing all those In the Line of Duty movies, following the success of Michelle Yeoh's Yes Madam and having to be her own thing, coming into the fold, playing against all the other types.
And Cynthia Rothrock, I mean, I think she got her start in Hong Kong movies. I don't know if she'd ever done anything before Yes Madam, and then from what I understand,
Sophia Crawford, who doubled, Sarah Michelle Gellar, same kind of deal, just British person working on these international productions for a Hong Kong stunt team,
Yeah, Yukari Oshima, she was like, she definitely fit the bill of being a badass. So, let's see. Well, Sammo Hung's wife, Joyce Godenzi, she got to do a couple films. Yeah, she did a film called She Shoots Straight.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's her in the lead role. Yeah, she she doesn't look like it, and she doesn't have like a tough look, but she definitely held her own in the action. So she was able to come across as believable. I don't know what her background is in terms of whether she had any training or what, but
well, I mean, they all pretty much are one giant family. It's like they're conquering just so many video store shelves and theaters, doing these kinds of movies. And obviously, Cy Hart's The Deadly Trio was a good one for both Jiang and Michelle Yeoh. And I see.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seems like we just need a little more of that. And I think my one issue with Louis Koo and some of those other guys who I like otherwise is that even Anthony Chow on Sounding, unfortunately, recently, they've been in a lot of movies that are confusing because like they're compilations of various TV shows in China, and they're editing into like a season into like a 2-hour movie. You're like, yeah, that's just not going to work. That rarely does.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't bother with it. I mean, I know.
I give them like 10 minutes, and then after a while, you're like, yeah, I can't even rank this really even as a movie because it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know anything about what's going on.
I think it's unfair to the production to do that. It's kind of false advertising. Like, I didn't ever bother to watch it, but like Donnie Yen had that Fist of Fury TV series in the 90s.
Yeah.
I think
and
Benny
even
Chan
another one, I think.
did some of that with them, and they released it as a so-called movie, but it was just some episodes edited together or something. So
Yeah.
again, I didn't see it, but once I found out it wasn't a real movie, but
I
just
saw clips and it was just like, yeah, this doesn't work if you don't know what's going on. So yeah, hopefully it'll get better, but you just don't know. Yep.
well, unfortunately, I think with everything going on, and obviously they've been proclaiming the death of Hong Kong cinema for quite a while now, and it keeps going to a certain extent. But lately, it's had me worried with everything going on, like the film censorship laws that China has gotten to pass in Hong Kong, and of course, the whole COVID pandemic has not done it any favors. But
No.
that's why I told everybody, like, Raging Fire, it felt like the end of an era.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully we can still get some other cool films, as time goes on.
We'll get it. It just won't be instantaneous. And I mean, Raging Fire is a good example that it's still alive. It's in waves, It's not instantaneous like we would like it, especially when you get to the late 90s where you're like, whoa, awesome.
Yeah, instead of a dozen movies or more per year that you want to check out, there might be one or two nowadays. But
Then by the time you're caught up, it's already been overhyped and you're like, it wasn't anything to write home about. What are you talking about?
at least it saves us money.
Right. Totally.
I mean, nowadays, like you said, like checking on Amazon or eBay, I mean, a lot of those prices are really jacked up.
It's our podcast now, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they're bad. So yeah, I recommend eBay. Don't
VHS
fall into
tapes.
Amazon's trap. VHS tapes. If you got to do online, some channels like Rare Lust are pretty good about getting their shit figured out.
Yeah, I mean, they were selling like old Tai Sang VHS tapes for like. There's some seller on Amazon. They got almost every Hong Kong movie that had a Tai Sang VHS release, and they're all between like $80 and $120 or something.
Mm-hmm. And I saw one going for like $200 to $1,000. I was like, get the fuck out of here. No.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not worth that much ever anywhere. I guarantee you, I could go to Chinatown in like San Francisco where I got family, and I could probably buy out an entire shelf of Tai Sing used DVDs or something like that, and it's got to be there somewhere.
Yeah, most everything I've pretty much bought online, except I did search a couple Chinatown shops years ago, like in New York and Chicago, but I never found any movies to buy. But I didn't spend much time looking, but I do remember one place in Chicago, Chinatown. They had some cool stuff. Like they had like an Andy Lau poster, and then they had a poster of First Strike.
Nice.
Jackie Chan. It was like, I think it was the poster where he's shown with that little, it's like a tracking gun he like used to fire the little tracking device on, but then it has like the sharks and the guys on the skis and everything with the snowy mountains in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's another film that, hey, a lot of negative reviews, but I think that's a really cool film.
Totally. It's got moments, and every movie has its moments, and you're going to check them all out regardless of their quality anyway. So, I mean, I would always get the whole, don't waste time on it. It was like, and I mean, I bought out so many of these that were rare and hard to find titles, and I had no issue with it. There was only like maybe one that I was disappointed with, and it's because someone put in the wrong disc, and then there was like maybe one other one, and it was just one of those just false advertising giant ensemble, just wrong sauce, didn't work. But it's going to happen eventually. So it's just, for the most part, I've been pretty impressed with what eBay had, and because I keep trying Yes Asia, and you're just like, yeah, no, it's continually out of stock. What do I got to do to let them know? Find me a copy. I will pay, $50. But
yeah, another good a good method is if you go to hkmdb.com and
the Hong
or
Kong
you could
movie database.
Yeah, or you could find it elsewhere too. You can just copy and paste like the Chinese title of the films, and then throw it on Google. And sometimes you can find those on like Hong Kong auction sites, and a lot of them have bilingual options, so you can message people and say, hey, do you ship overseas, this and that. Sometimes if they're out of print, the prices might get a little bit ridiculous, especially for like a VCD format or something. But it all depends on what it's worth to you. I mean, like I've a couple times I've spent more money than I'd like to admit on just one single movie, but my wife won't let me do that anymore.
Oh dear. It is hard to justify it after a while, and I've had to even tell other people before. There's many moments where it's like, hey, what happens.
Yeah. But I mean, so actually it was here's somebody we didn't talk about is Yun Biao.
Yeah, I talked about him in the last one, but yeah, he is a mastermind, and it's just criminal. And so I'd like to know your theories. Why do you think he had a huge career, but just wasn't as big a name as, say, even the character actors like
I think
Simon Yam?
Well, I think you got Jackie, you got Samo, and you got Yun Biao, and then I think I think a lot of people viewed him as like third tier, number three of that group. Jackie obviously was the most popular. Sammo Hung
just won over after a while.
But I mean, Yun Biao, I think he was probably the most acrobatic of all three of them. And I don't know, maybe I don't know if it was like his look or what, but I think he had a great career in Hong Kong, but he just didn't really move beyond, like, if you ask the average person on the street, like, they're not gonna
You're that dude who worked with Michelle Yeoh.
Unfortunately, I don't think here in the United States, I don't think even the average person's heard of Sammo Hung, which I think is a shame, but at least Jackie Chan's a household name, so.
Right. It's good. It's very good.
But Yun Biao, let's see, yeah, Righting Wrongs was the movie, and he did it with Cynthia Rothrock. That's a film that I spent quite a bit of money on to get the old DVD, like it was a Universe Laser. It had like a dual side Cantonese version on one side and Mandarin on the other, which I'd never seen that before. It's like a different cut of the film.
That's wild.
And then within like a short time period, they like re-released it with the digitally remastered version for like $15. I was like, yeah, I should have been more patient, but
right.
Oh well, that was off eBay, so I just got what
you paid for.
Yeah, stick with what I paid for already, and learn my lesson next time. Don't spend too much. Who else can we talk about? Unfortunately, I got to say too. I mean, no offense to the younger guys out there, but let's be honest, for many decades, Hong Kong had such a vast talent pool. And maybe it's just because I don't know what it is, but they don't seem like they have people left anymore who can kind of carry on the legacy, so to speak. You know,
It's a tough deal, it seems like.
once all these guys, and a lot of them already did retire, but you know, a lot of them are getting older. It's like, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be the same.
No. Different market.
Yeah.
I mean, we were having that struggle with our regular American action stars too. Where it's like, okay, who's going to carry the torch? Because the ones we like aren't being well used. The ones that are being overused are kind of making us dislike them even more.
Yeah, and it's probably something to do too with nostalgia and the era you grew up in. But I mean, still,
It
for
is.
action films, it's like, you know,
Investors doing too much of the talking instead of, no, let's get this guy.
there's never going to be another Schwarzenegger and Stallone and, you know, Van Damme and just all those guys at once that you know really help just push the genre into overdrive.
Right.
It's, and the other unfortunate thing is too, I mean, back in those days, we got practical effects pretty much 100% of the time. Nowadays, I understand, you know, they want to, safety is a big thing, so I don't blame anybody for using CGI if they want to be safe, but it just doesn't have the same impact on screen, you know, as practical effects. So
not going to for a while. It's just, you need someone who can really just channel it and make sure that, again, we accept what's on screen versus that's just all we can afford. You know, sorry, you know.
Yeah, and the guys, you know, I got to credit, you know, it's not just Hong Kong cinema, but they definitely were kind of the top of the heap of proving you can make fantastic action films for pretty low budget. You know, back in, like, I think Hard Boiled had what, $4 million US budget in '92.
Mm-hmm.
Which still, I'm sure that was a lot less than, I mean,
that's really all it's coming down to. It's just like they want to make it fast. They want to have a respectable budget. But I even miss the '90s when they did the whole like film it for $10,000. Now it seems like unless it's made for 2 million is as low as you can go, and I'm like, that's such bullshit. Because you see people who are the cast of a TV show get together and they'll crowdfund a movie and pitch in, you know, like each like $5,000 each, and then, you know, star and shoot it and win some awards or get some fanfare from their base. And there are so many exceptions to every rule, and I'm still seeing people mock how people can film something with a phone. It's like, well, if you know how to frame it, you can totally do a great job with that. You just need to hire a sound guy and do some color correcting and other stuff. But don't just, you know, complain and then act like, you know, restrictions and everything. It's like, no, it's something more to this.
you know, what, 10 years ago, Gareth Evans he kind of reminded me of John Woo in the sense of, like, you know, here's Hard Boiled 20 years earlier that was made for what, I think 4 million, and then he did Gareth Evans did The Raid for like 2 million US or something. You know, really by like the standards of Hollywood, I mean, the budget was tiny, but yet
Jesse V. Johnson and Isaac Florentine, I think, are going to keep doing. They're going to get back to doing some international stuff like they first were doing. Now that they've been comfortable helping out people like William Kaufman and other people doing low budget B action movies. I can't get into the raid type movies, but I like the whole focus of it, which is do all these Die Hard, Assault on Precinct 13 type movies, and then the rest of it is people fight each other to the death. I mean, Triple Threat did that, I thought, pretty well.
Yeah, I like Triple Threat a lot. I think, like you said, Jesse V. Johnson, I believe he's Vic Armstrong's nephew.
Something like that.
And I mean, Vic
he's who got him in the
Armstrong,
door.
yeah, I mean, that guy, I mean, if you look at his like credits on IMDb, I mean, he's done so many phenomenal action choreography, action stunt coordination and stuff. And the
We
movie
got people
Joshua
like
Tree with Dolph Lundgren.
Yes.
That's got the best John Woo shootout that John Woo didn't do. So
unfortunately, Vic seems to be back doing second unit stuff, but I'm glad he's still active. I mean, Mechanic Resurrection has a great finale on a boat, and he, unfortunately, the John Wick guys are popularizing the whole, hey, give a martial artist or action guy a chance behind the camera. So I'm glad that they're popularizing that and doing their own thing. That's just a great homage to, and as well as its own special cool world. I like how with the Equalizer, Antoine Fuqua is still taking a lot of beloved, badass actors and action stars and kind of doing, what he does best, just more of the same tough and gritty, Walter Hill type movies. Just everything is a Western, and at the end of the day, someone's going to just kick some ass and clean shop, But
yeah, I mean, a lot
we
of
had
those
other greats that we've lost, like Tony Scott. I'm like,
Yeah, I was just thinking about him the other day. Like
Michael Bay took a while to stop doing the Transformers stuff and come back and do regular over the top.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm looking forward to that ambulance movie.
Right? But would you like to? Is it in theaters or video?
I think it's coming out in the theater next month.
Good. Because it seemed for a while like he was doing streaming only movies. I'm like, no, I don't want him to. I want to see that in a theater.
I mean, yeah, Michael Bay gets a lot of shit, and I understand. But hey,
it's Michael Bay.
He made The Rock, which I
got the Criterion Collection release. So
yeah, there you go. So
did Armageddon. So Bad Boys, I'll be honest, I watch them anytime they're on TV, and I have fun. Are they on the level as Lethal Weapon or Die Hard? But no. But that's okay.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
I'll take it over any other lazy movie with Dean Devlin or Brett Ratner that's just lazy. And it's like that. Those, he's just unapologetic, over the top, and I'm sorry, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many filmmakers that they really just with one or two films, you just know, okay, these guys really know how to do action films.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just far too many people to name, but like you said, Antoine Fuqua, and then obviously he did Replacement Killers.
Yes, and that was, I think he learned quickly from the John Woo school and was like, hey, whatever he loved, he already was a Kurosawa guy, so it's like, yeah, just do the whole code of honor and characters fighting for what they believe in. He does natural drama and action that audiences respond to. It's like, that's something.
Yeah, like Training Day. I mean, that's just a cool film,
And I mean, I think that even goes back to Heat in Collateral. Michael Mann is totally doing making references to Hong Kong cinema in those, and yeah, same kind of deal there. He was very influenced by Sidney Lumet kind of hard-boiled crime thrillers, and then mixing in, when you get David Ayer and other people scripting your movies, obviously you get some, High Noon and just other Lethal Weapon type of moments, and it's just not easy for everyone. It seems like some of these guys, they got to envision it or work with certain people, and I just say keep trying to evolve whatever way you can.
Yeah, I mean, those cop films that like like End of Watch.
I lost you there for a sec.
Oh, sorry, End of Watch.
Yeah, we talked all about David Ayer's movies and how he is just in your face, and I see many people talking shit about him. Like, I have no issue with Street Kings or SWAT or even his more recent ones, like the Tax Collector. I thought was cool. He even includes a few characters from Training Day in there, and he's just really good at kind of. I feel like everyone has to be compared all the time nowadays, and it's just like they're similar, but they're their own oyster. I'm not going to compare Tarantino to Jim Jarmusch or Luc Besson to, I don't know, Howard Hawks. They're all different, but very similar. I mean, overall, everyone's telling the same story over time. So,
You mentioned several like American filmmakers that really specialize in those like kind of street level crime films, like
yeah, the
Scorsese.
noir looking cities, and some of them are kind of imitating Scorsese, and other times is like, no, he's not even touching this.
Dante Lum, who you probably know him from
one of the best. Yep.
Some of his action blockbusters, which, I mean, there's no denying that he and Benny Chan were, kind of the top two in any time, recent times, that were able to do these like really large scale, big budget, kind of epic blockbusters. And Dante did more of kind of like a military,
he's done so many of them that
said in interviews like he was really into like police tactics and weaponry and military hardware and all that stuff.
Yep.
So
he works with Gordon Shan quite a lot too.
Yeah. And of course, Johnny Doe, who I don't know if he's like retired now or what, but
I seem to recall there was like a rumor he had died, but I had just gotten it mixed up with Ringo Lam.
Ringo Lam passed away, and
heart attack, like freak accident. You're like, no.
Benny Chan, few other folks, but Johnny Doe, I'm not quite sure what he's up to nowadays, but I think for the gunplay, he really kind of took over from when John Woo went to Hollywood, and really, I mean, he made his own kind of style, but it definitely had like,
he goes back to like the spaghetti western and Assassins, as opposed to like Woo. You're never going to be able to replicate the whole jumping in the air with two pistols in both hands. Is like he's doing the whole more just everyone just schemes and plans, and the quiet moments are just as important as the violent moments. And I mean, Vengeance from 2009 is just great movie. It's just yeah. You are and inspired to just keep watching what's happening on screen.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Those films, like, he was one of a few directors that was really able to make a shootout, look like a artwork or something. Vengeance.
You ever see Running Out of Time?
Yeah, I've seen. I was a huge fan of the whole Milky Way Image company that he had going.
So good on those. Yeah.
So I saw almost every film they made in that company, with just a few exceptions. Running Out of Time, that one was. I like it. I don't love it, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I think a lot of people liked it a little bit better than I did, but I still enjoy it. It was kind of I don't know. It wasn't a bad film, but it's not one of my favorites of him. I like The Mission a lot better.
I couldn't get into The Mission, but I do. No. It's just so slow, but it's a good premise. I love the whole setup and everything. And more or less what he understands is just motivation, and that gets you interested in the whole, just as opposed to just feeling like it's mindless, fluff.
Yeah, a lot of his films had like a certain quirkiness to them, and just like, if you look at Wu's shootouts that have all this movement compared to like the mall shootout in Mission, where it's like it's very still, like everybody's like standing almost still in one spot, but it's like it still has this I don't know, some kinetic energy to it.
Very atmospheric. Yeah.
But then he did kind of I think Full-Time Killer was the first one I saw from him.
That was wacky. That was one of those, is like the script doesn't work, but you just gotta watch the batshit crazy action and the premise. So it's just this guy who's a vigilante at night, and the other hitman is just trying to stay clear of it. And of course, they're in with the same woman, so it's like, wow, this is nutty.
Yeah, no, that's a cool film. PTU, even though it's slow, but it's like,
oh, I can't do the PTU movies.
It has such an atmosphere to it, it's like
the atmosphere is good. He carries it in the rest of his movies. Like, they're always there, and it's tough to describe because like Ringo Lam kind of does more of the whole taut, just people looking into something they shouldn't be seeing, and John Woo does the whole, quiet moments followed by outbursts of loud, surprises, and he does more kind of just like follow around, track around, and then just stop. And as soon as someone has said something important, you see people in a room. Like the election movies are pretty good with Simon Yam as a gangster. They kind of work in some dark comedy, and
there was definitely that sense of humor and like almost like a playfulness at times. At times it makes me think of like not a whole lot, but a tiny bit of like Takeshi Kitano's work, like
especially when you get to Mad Detective and Exiled, and it's like, man, these are breaking news is even more bad shit. You're like, wow, I'm seeing a violent robbery unfold.
Let's see. A Hero Never Dies. I mean, that one's so cool. I mean, even though the ending is like, just crazy, right? But did you see that one where it's got Lao Ching-wan? He's like in the wheelchair, and I don't know how you do spoilers, really. I mean, I won't say anything about it.
I have actually not seen this one. It's been on my to watch list, so I'll check it out. Yeah, but
I mean, you might not. I don't know if you like it. If you liked Full-Time Killer, I think you might enjoy it. I mean, that was probably the second Johnny Toe film I saw back in the day. Like after I rented Full-Time Killer, then I loved it so much. I was like, I got to see everything this guy's made, So I think A Hero Never Dies.
Night and Expect the Unexpected, and even Beast Cops. I mean, those all kind of flow together after a while. There's like Mad Detective. It's like they're all movies that are interesting in that basically they just get to be experimental.
Yeah, Mad Detective was really cool. Blind Detective was a little different, but it was okay. It was kind of like he mixed his romantic comedies with his crime films.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the guy that used to do a lot of the films with him, Waika Fai, he's got actually another film coming out called Detective versus Sleuths or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
It actually looks kind of good. Like I just saw the trailer a few days ago. I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna have to check it out. The title's kind of off, but originally they were gonna call it Cold Detective to kind of make it sound like, Mad Detective or whatever. And you got Lao Ching-wan in there again, like presumably playing like a crazy person or something. But
Oh boy, wild.
Let's see here. Nick Chung, I mean, I think he got his start in comedy, and he was able to really, transition over to being, a serious actor and an award-winning actor too. I mean, like The Beast Stalker and Unbeatable.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he looked pretty badass in Unbeatable. I was surprised, usually he's just a skinny guy. All of a sudden, he's like in Unbeatable. I guess it was all real. Like I think he really like got in shape for the role.
Yeah, he's in a lot of those Infernal Affairs type movies where he just shows up, and it was another one where you're like, hey, he needs more work.
There was a film called Helios that came out a few years back, and
I think I saw the trailer. I didn't see the movie.
It was about like this small nuclear device and stuff. They had like a big international cast, like Hong Kong actors,
Yeah, that's the one.
and
Russell
Korean
Wong,
actors.
I think, was in it, if I'm not mistaken.
It had, I was going to talk about, her name is Janice Munn. She's, just this unassuming, very skinny, young actress, right? And they really made her a badass in that film. Like she was like some kind of a killer.
So I have not seen this one yet because there's I was getting them over mixed up with a bunch of the movies that were kind of takeoffs on Cold War and what's the other one? Shockwave, and just like they were doing takes on that. But yeah, it's like there was Line Walker, and it was followed by a bunch of other ones. It's like they're all trying to be like White Storm, S Storm, Z Storm, P Storm. Those were pretty dumb. Because they're trying to be just like all these other awesome top movies, and it's like, but they don't deliver on any action or the cast. But yeah, Helios, I did hear good stuff about because it was just every doomsday device you could think of.
That had really good action in it. I mean, you can't say like, oh, it's a great film or whatever, but the action.
By the guys that did Cold War, so I'll take a chance on it versus the other guys who are like, whoa, what? Yeah, they're just again. You're back to the TV shows where it's
Yeah, that whole series you were talking about, I didn't even see any of those. Like it started with Z Storm, and then
yeah, you're mistaking it for White Storm. You're like, no, don't you dare mix it up with White Storm.
Well, when I first heard about that first one, I misread the article. I thought they said it was going to be Dante Lum. Turned out to be David Lum. Yeah. And David Lum is, no offense to him, but he's not Dante Lum. So, and then once the reviews came out, and then they just kept making them. It was like, I thought about checking out the last one, G Storm, but
yeah,
I thought, then I might have to go buy all the other ones. So,
and they don't have any relation to each other. That's where you feel really pissed off. You're like, you bastards, you waste all this money.
Yeah, Louis Koo, I mean, he was like in like almost every movie, for a while. Like
just about everyone, yeah. And I can't blame him for wanting a payday, but it's just one of those, like, if you didn't have the internet, I don't know how I would watch half these movies, because it's like some of them you're going to go the full ounce and buy the Blu-ray, and there's others just like, yeah, I'll just wait for streaming. Or
yeah, I mean, if it weren't for the internet, I mean, unfortunately, you'd have to rely on like word of mouth and stuff, and younger kids can watch those at least. And if he doesn't like them, I don't want to force it on him, but of course I'm hoping. Yeah. Please like them,
Please don't reject. Please like. Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, he's got my DNA in him, so I think he'll probably like him.
We'll return after these messages.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, all things that we love, all manga that were originally published in the legendary magazine Weekly Shonen Jump.
But not every series can run for 300 chapters and have a hit anime. This is David.
This is Jordan.
We're the hosts of Shonen Flop. Each episode we look at manga that ran in Jump that didn't quite make it.
We discuss what it did wrong, what it did right, how the series could have turned itself around, and ultimately, was it a flop or not?
We're on all your favorite podcast apps, and you can find us at shonenflop.com.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.